What's poppin', mi gente? It's your boy back with another video. Now, as I record, this is probably about 3:46 in the morning. I've had a bunch of drinks. I was just out with some chick, so your boy is just hardwired right now. But I wanted to put this update up because I wanted to put it up actually on New Year's Day, but the holidays and everything have been keeping me so busy. It's been crazy. I'm not complaining. It's been loads of fun, but well, the bad news is I just recently lost my job, so I mean, I'm going to have more free time to work on the engine, but funds are kind of limited right now. I'm actually kind of happy about this fact because I wasn't happy with the position I had. Felt like I was being treated like a simp, and I mean, as you can hopefully tell by now, I'm not a man to take for a fucking fool. I'm just not playing it. But I'm digressing here. We're not here to talk about my personal life. We're here to talk about my boy, Legacy Richter. You'll notice he doesn't have an outline anymore. Well, that's because I implemented his material with the shader on it. So that, guess what? Now he actually uses the color palette shader versus just using a generic kind of sprite shader that I had set up. And you can see what I mean here, because if I put it back to cycle red or base palette, you can see it has his outline. But no, we're going to go use him here without the outline. So I've completed all of his animations. There's one animation I haven't done yet, and that's his drop kick, and that's because it's probably not going to be implemented, because I was thinking at first of putting this in, although with much less horizontal movement, but it's completely useless for him versus his frenzy whip and with his rising slash. It was like I couldn't find a use for it. It was just extra fluff that was like, no, for a legacy character it's going to be completely useless. I mean, there just was no benefit to it. I am planning on implementing a new whip fireball move for him, where he powers up his whip to look like it's flaming and throws a fireball across the screen. But that's going to be something that's designed to take his MP away. But that's totally different. Again, this drop kick, I just couldn't find a use for it. It was like, it's just extra fluff that's totally useless. He does have a quick, I call it a stomping move, but it's pretty much a move to get him out of the air very quickly if you need to, just like Alucard. And this is designed to be instantaneous. You can see it's a quick jerking reaction at the start when it starts, but at the start where it starts. Haha, you can tell I've been drinking. Okay, getting back on subject. But it's designed to be a quick motion that gets him out of the air when somebody's trying to assault him, to give you a little more mobility. See, I don't mind putting in a new move that has a use, but something like the drop kick that was like, there's no use for this. It's like, why put it in? It's just extra fluff in there for no purpose whatsoever. I want everything to have a specific use. Maybe I'll implement it later. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but let's show off some animations, okay? Let's first start off with, and I want to go ahead and give a dedication here, because for the Frenzy Whip move, which is labeled as his Air Rush, there was a Castlevania fan game that was in the works a couple years ago that I pulled with the author's permission some time ago this effect from. Now I'm thinking I might want to put an actual drawn vampire killer under this at some point, but right now I think this works pretty good, this additive blue effect. But I forget what the name of that fan game was at the moment, but it's Castlevania Battle of Eternity, I think, and it looked like it had a lot of potential, but the author abandoned it well over 5 years ago, so, and I haven't heard from him since, no contact, no nothing, so. But I wanted to use this effect as kind of a dedication because I thought it looked pretty awesome. His rising, excuse me, oof, sorry about that. Okay, so his rising whip move, as it was previously known, which is basically his high jump, is now rising slashed. At the time when I designed it, I wanted to use the dagger he has in his pocket because that's not used at all. It just sits there, and it's totally pointless. I don't know what they were thinking with it. So here we actually use that, and as you can see, there's a nice additive blue effect with it. Pretty simple stuff. But we wanted to pretty things up a bit, beautify them a bit more, make things look nicer. His backflip was heavily improved upon, as you can see here. It doesn't just look like a generic chopped up thing. It actually looks like he's flipping here. I might change the timing a little bit once I implement the actual physics in game and make it a little faster, but right now I'm pretty happy with this, so we'll let it be. Let's see, a lot of the animations were really touched up. Like, you know what, let's go ahead and show off something a little more creative here. Like, he initially didn't have an animation where it pretty much flew back. When he was, unlike Alucard, who could be sent flying across the screen, his animation was just his basic aerial pain animation. He does now. And he also has an animation where he slams into the wall, as you can see, and then starts falling. And he even has an animation where he'll slam into the wall and then land afterwards, as you can see, which he goes into his roll, he rolls forward. He also has something where if he doesn't slam into a wall and is sent flying back, he'll eventually hit the ground and roll backwards, flip to his feet. So we want to give Richter a little more style here. We want him to look so generic and bland and boring. Even his 1000 Edge animation where he holds tons of daggers, put a little motion blur on the fists. The artist did a great job here, so we just want to touch him up a little bit, give him more flair, more style, not make him so kind of yeah, that's cool. He's got great moves, but the animations were kind of very plain. So we improved a little bit here. Let's show off his vampire killer for a second. I'm not going to show off all the animations because we'd be here for a long time. And as I said, this is kind of a spur of the moment thing. Had a couple of drinks, decided let's go and do this right now at almost 4 in the morning. So why the hell not? Okay, let's set these 2 animations to loop first. And the vampire killer actually uses a color palette shader, as you can see here. The reason is because for his flaming whip, it uses cycling. And normally what I do is I create a separate animator for the weapons, but in a legacy character's case, there's no need because they only have one weapon, so there's no need. Like Richter or Alucard, rather, you'll notice if I go into player sprite, we have weapon set 1. Let's go and click on that as its own animator. Weapon set 2, because there's a lot of nuances to this. But for something like a legacy classic character, it's not necessary because they have 1 attack. You know, pretty simple stuff. So we keep it a little more bare bones, saves them a lot of time. But let's go ahead and set these to loop so that when I go ahead and play them, it doesn't come out all choppy and messed up, and you know where it plays it just once. Let's go with the regular attack. Oops, I just moved it. So this is layer default state, so it just plays, and voila, we have a blinking vampire killer. And that, like I said, is all the palette shader. If I go over here to V-Killer, you can quickly see how it's shifting between multiple palettes when the whip blinks. Now, the flaming whip was the reason behind this. Let's go ahead and set that to layer default state. You'll notice we have color cycling going on there. This is a retro 2D effect. You'll notice the cycle's orange, but if you're very astute, you'll also notice something else, this black area. You'll notice that kind of shifts, and I'm going to go ahead and pause it right here when it's stuck out to the left a little bit. Now, that was an effect that was originally in the game. In my previous release, I don't believe I did color cycling here because I wanted to do something different, so I used a gray whip that was kind of screenshot captures. But this now is actually a gradient that scrolls horizontally. Let's go ahead and move him a little over so that you can see it. I mean, you can see it in the scene view here, but I want you to actually see it in the game view. So let's go ahead and do that. Oops, not sure what happened there. Let's try this one more time. Yeah, this here is actually color cycling with a gradient that uses a mask. I'm going to talk a little about that because the vampire killer setup without the flame whip is just, I mean, I didn't even need to create a separate object. I could use one of these, which is what I initially did. But then I realized the flaming whip was a little more involved because it uses this gradient here. So what happens is I use a mask that I have a script here that copies the sprite from V-Killer to V-Killer mask every step. Unfortunately, Unity hasn't set up a way to do this automatically without a script, which is fucking stupid. I mean, you're going to use a mask, it usually copies something else. So I don't know what the fuck they were thinking here. But the bottom line is you're working with what you got. So I set up a little script. It's nothing too major. I'll go ahead and quickly click into it so you guys can see. And I'm going to go ahead and move on here because this video is already at about 8 minutes. Take a drink while this is going on. Let's go. Anytime this century, Mono developed as a piece of hot steaming garbage in the middle of a Florida road in the summertime. Okay, so simple script. Nothing to really talk about here except sprite renderer. This is where it copies from the Vampire Killer's sprite renderer. Animators, so it can read Richter and know what animation there should be something showing in the mask. Otherwise, there should be nothing in the mask, so nothing shows up. Animator state info. And once again, Richter's animations. And sprite mask rend is the sprite mask, and you can see here what it basically does is it looks if old Richter's in one of the fire animations and they're past a certain point, and we're making sure we're looking at the object old Richter in case there's anything else that uses the script because I could use it multiple times. We want to go ahead and copy the sprite from Vampire Killer into the mask, and if not, we want to make sure the mask is blank. That's all there is to that. Nothing fancy here. This is 101 level shit for anybody who knows how to do C# coding. So you see the mask updates every time. The fire gradient, this is an animation that uses a different layer. You can see here. All it basically does is over and over, move it over. You can see it's just literally scrolling and repeating, looping infinitely. The gradient itself is pretty simple. I did make it a bit taller because I was going to use it for some of the sprites where he's reeling up here, but it just didn't look right. So I did it this way instead. You know, I don't need to shrink it down. I'm fine with it that size. It's not taking any major amount of space. I mean, if I go over to the... let's see. Let's go and go over to Show and Explorer. Yeah, I'm not worried about 2K disk space, and I'm not worried about 64K video RAM. I couldn't care less about that. That's nothing. That's insignificant nowadays. Okay, so anyway, the bottom line is I could have made this a little less vertically as large, but I don't give a damn about it. Okay, so basically the gradient scrolls across the fire whip, which the whip itself uses color cycling orange. It cycles through a multitude of palettes here, which I'll try to quickly bring up. Kind of hard to tell. Actually, I won't bring it up because you can see here the way this is broken up. There's 6 colors to the whip, and the color cycling is just cycling between 5 colors basically, with the 6th one being the first color repeated, and it cycles through them, you know, from color 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, repeat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ad infinitum. And that's all there is to it. It's color cycling. If you don't know how to do color cycling, there's a million things on Google. Look it up. I don't want to bore everybody to tears here. But the Vampire Killer, I really admire how creative they were in the original game, because they used color cycling and they could have stopped there. They also use flame particles that I haven't implemented yet that go forward in the direction of the whip. But you notice the gradient comes towards the player. And that was like that in the original game too. They really got creative with this. I mean, it's really interesting how they added little things in to go above and beyond that really make the game look good and add that extra touch of obsessiveness, I want to say, but in reality it's creativity that just makes the game look amazing. So let's go back to old Richter really quickly. Let's go ahead and go back and set up his normal attack to start instead. And you'll notice that if I go to the mask, there's nothing in there, because he's not in a fire animation. The gradient still moves. It moves infinitely, as you can see by this arrow that's going across and up here in the position. But that doesn't affect anything because there's nothing in the mask, so you never see it. So, nice and simple, quick way to do it, because the big thing here is time. I want to make sure that I'm not taking too long here. When crouching, I had to add a couple of extra sprites to the Vampire Killer, as you can see here, to make sure that he actually wasn't going through the ground. In the original game, he does actually have an animation where he goes into the ground a little bit. In Nintendo games, he does as well, but it was like, you know what, here he was really going in a lot, and I didn't want to have to do a new animation, so I edited it myself and just kind of said, okay, well, you know, let's change this up a little bit so when he's ducking, as you can see, it's not going into the floor and looking funny. At the very end, when he pulls it back, it is a little bit, but I don't care about that. Point is, I'm putting the extra little love in to make sure the game looks good. Don't want to do a half job here and have something that's just garbage, honestly. Okay, so there's a lot more I can touch on for Legacy Richter, but at the moment the next step is going to be to go ahead and start coding in certain things. Alucard has most of the scripting done for him already, so it's going to be copy-paste with some edits. But yeah, his animations got put in within a week. You know, since I had the free time, I just sat down, got it done. It was like, okay, isn't that big a deal, you know. On the right side, I actually have the original animation sent by the artist, so it was easy to match up all the sprites and figure out what was going on. But now with that done, I feel like there's a big chunk of Legacy Richter. The coding is going to be next, and I have to create behavior scripts for the related animations, but that's a big chunk right there. After that, it's just testing his motion, which, again, he has the same collision engine as Richter's, as Alucard's, same motion controls horizontally and vertically, so it's like, it's not a big deal. Although it is something that'll probably take maybe 2 or 3 weeks to do, possibly longer. I don't want to quote that because it all depends on what goes on. I am looking for a new job, so if I find another job, I can slow things down. But anyway, wanted to share that with you guys because I know, you know, seeing is believing. It's going to show off one more animation. That's going to be his new dash. You can see the whip is still there because I have this going. But let's go ahead and set this back to layer default state. Stop the game briefly because that's only showing up there because I transitioned something that shouldn't have happened. I mean, just about all of his animations were inspired by the originals, but were also changed up to look even better. Like Grand Cross here, you'll notice, has a lot more effects in it. Let's see, what else do I want to show off to you guys? I showed off the high jump already, Hydro Storm. Again, minor enhancements really make the game flourish. For those who played my Game Maker version, you'll notice Hydro Storm is much shorter because it hits quicker and more often, but does overall less damage. Because it was just too overpowered in the original game. I mean, it was ridiculous how crazy it was, how much damage you did. It was like, oh my god, really? Like, seriously, dude? Like, this is a one-shot kill against anything, basically. It was any boss in the game got owned royally by Richter doing that. Anyway, so moveset-wise, let's talk about that. He's going to have his classic whip attack, obviously. But special move-wise, I'm going to give him his Rising Slash, which is designed to cause bleeding in an enemy as having physics put in so that if you go through an enemy, you're not going to take touch damage while you're doing that. It's his previous high jump, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Rising Slash. So you don't take touch damage. And as you start to fall, you don't take touch damage for a short time, so you have time to evade. But it's also being set up so you can't use it to go invulnerable and go through things. But like, for example, let's say I put him in the main game and you have to fight Galamorph. You don't want to use his Rising Slash, hit Galamorph 4 or 5 times, start to fall and take damage. That makes no damn sense. The move's useless. Frenzy Whip is being designed, and that's his air rush base, to be something that, again, takes MP, you use it, you go through them, you do decent damage, but it's not something you can use all the time. For anybody who's played my original Game Maker demo, you know I gave him an MP gauge, so this and the Rising Slash definitely take MP. The slide isn't going to take MP, you know, because but it is being designed to be something that when he hits an enemy with his foot, instead of going through them, if the enemy can be gone through, he'll go through them. If he would go through the enemy while sliding and take damage, he'll stop and hit the enemy multiple times with his foot instead, so it's much more useful. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, picture Dragon's Crown, where you slide towards enemies and you hit a couple of times, but it's not major damage. Again, the idea is to make everything useful here, which is why I didn't really want to put in his drop kick, because it was totally useless. I could have had it be something that took MP and sent enemies flying away, but it was like, no, for a Legacy retro character, it just didn't fit in. It was like, this is kind of useless, but again, maybe later on I'll find a better use for it and choose to use it, so we'll see. Who knows? Okay, so when it comes to Legacy Richter, it's been about 17 minutes now. I didn't expect to go on this long, but that's pretty much all I have to talk about. I'm going to be putting up another video soon, and the video is probably just going to be an announcement to everybody, announcing that I'm not going to be putting up any more big update videos regularly for non-Patreon subscribers. The reason is I feel like my Patreons are not getting enough thank you for the effort they're putting in. Truth of the matter is, before I jumped on Patreon, it was extremely rare to see more than a quick post on WordPress or DeviantArt, or more than an image and a quick blog. Something that took 5 minutes to do. I mean, to be making these videos for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the case may be, and to have everybody seeing them feels like not necessary. I mean, again, you Patreons, my patrons, are the ones who make this project a reality. You know, like right now I'm unemployed, and you guys are the ones who keep the sprite work going. You're the guys who keep the concept info going. You just keep this project alive. Versus before I had Patreon, I mean, like I said, it wasn't unheard of to not get an update for 3 months, it to be a brief update. And the reason is because the people who really want to support this project have no problem giving $5 a month. I honestly feel like there's no reason that anybody in the world can't give $5 a month. $5 a month broken up between 30 days is an immaterial amount of money. It's nothing. Okay, it's literally nothing. I mean, if somebody doesn't want to do it, that's fine. I understand completely. I'm not entitled to anything. But nobody's entitled to me giving updates either. So I feel like my Patreon supporters should really get all the thank yous and really get all these little videos and all these extra featurettes and all this stuff that'll really show them, hey, here's what I'm contributing towards. Hey, here's where my funds are going. So probably going to make a video about that briefly, but that's something I'll do in a couple of days. With that, it's about 4:10 in the morning. I'm going to call it a night. So, you know, happy holidays to everybody. You know, happy New Year's. Para mi gente latino, feliz Día de los Reyes. You know, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.